So you may ask, what is an annotated outline and what makes a good one? And I will show you that for purposes of this class. And we will take a look at the exemplar that's in your course resources. And you click on the course, and then you click resources, the resources tab. There, so my computer catches up, there are two folders for 637. The one that says for doc program has an annotated outline example. So if we click on that and open it, we can take a look. Here it comes. And it's about to show up. So here we go. This is an annotated outline. It is the one I include as an example. Because here's what you do. You take, I'll blow this up for you. You take notes. I use sticky notes. You can use note cards. You can do however you want, but you pull ideas from different sources. And so from this source, you pull a bunch of notes and ideas. From this source, you pull a bunch of notes and ideas. And wherever the notes connect, you put them into a group. And this person, Renee, here has an idea of, the general idea is transitioning from elementary to middle school. And she has an introduction. So she's forming the ideas into her paper. This is something you do before the paper, before writing the paper. It's basically sentences that will fit into the paper. So adolescence is characterized by numerous and marked physical, physiological, emotional, and cognitive changes. She cites 2 different papers. And throughout here, she cites 1, 2, 3. There's Colleen Jumpers. Is that just 3 different sources in one paragraph? Now, one of the ways that I know that you have taken all the big stack of literature and integrated and pulled ideas across things is that when I look at a lit review, when I look at a paper that has sources, I'm going to see that in each paragraph, 99% of the paragraphs will have multiple sources cited. You're not just going to have one paragraph that's all about ideas from Gutman and Midgley, for instance. They've got Gutman and Midgley, they've got Wigfield, Lutz, and Wagner, and they've got Colley and Yankovic, all cited in the same thing under the big umbrella of transitioning from elementary and middle school. Then there's general transitioning information, and there's a bunch of sources there. Implications for diverse populations. So this is the set of ideas, the flow of ideas that will happen in the paper. And within those big ideas, there are several things cited under each one to help explain what it is, what's important about it, what are the key terms, and why it's important. And again, citing several sources in each bullet. So part D is self-esteem, self-perceptions, and self-efficacy. They've got Wigfield, they've got Anderson, they've got Colley, they've got Lord, they've got McDougall. They're all over the place with the sources, but all of the things are pulling in the same general idea. And that strengthens the argument for what you're trying to convince people with. Is having those multiple sources, especially of peer-reviewed journal articles. That just not just something pulled off the web randomly. Okay, so she's going through, and there's a natural flow of the idea. So I'm going to look at within each idea that you've got several sources, but I'm also looking at how the ideas flow from the beginning to the end. Does it make sense? Is there something that should be moved earlier or later in the flow of ideas as you're laying this out to make a stronger argument, or a more logical argument? So go through this example, but yeah, I think those are the things that I'll be looking for. Every idea is well supported by multiple sources. The ideas logically flow, and I can see where you're going with the paper. So it's fairly easy to see where she's going in. She ends up with something very specific, a very specific ASCA national model. Because when you're trying to convince somebody of something, you usually cut it down from general, a little bit more narrow, a little bit more narrow, and then finish with something really specific. Now, towards the end of that, when you're getting really narrow, you may only have one or two authors that have covered something really specific. So in those instances, you may have one section that's only got one or two authors, and that's okay, because it's at the end, because it makes sense that you've narrowed it down. But in this case, Renee did a great job finding multiple sources for all levels of her argument. And that's what this is when you're aiming at practitioners instead of researchers. You're using these research-based things, but you're working the ideas to convince them of something that's practical and important. And so you need to start with the general problem and work your way down to where the rubber meets the road. What are the details? What are the procedures? You know, whatever it is you're trying to convince them of, it's got to have a so what at the end. You've told me all this stuff. I believe it's important. What do I do? What are my action points? What are you going to challenge them to do? That's what should be towards the end. And for Renee, that was implementing the ASCA model. And she gave things that worked and why it was an effective transition program. So it's specific enough to follow. And that's when practitioners are looking for articles, they want to be convinced, but they also want a lot of details on what it means to implement that idea. So that's what I'll be looking for. Well-organized paper that flows, starts general, ends specific, and each section has multiple sources supporting it. There you go. That is the annotated outline. Now, once you have an annotated outline like this, I mean, most of these sentences really go well together. So there may be a sentence or a phrase that goes in between two of these bullet points, like number 1 and number 2 here. Or they may just be sentences that fit right in there. So she's got a lot of pages of notes, and each one's a complete sentence. She may have 80% of her paper actually written. It's just not in that essay form yet. And this is an effective way to see if there are some points that you want to make, but so the reason I'm having you do this is because there may be important things that deserve their own bullet point and lots of arguments, and you may not have enough sources. And so this will tell you where your gaps are. So it helps you organize your argument, and it helps you identify gaps so that you can say, okay, the social issues, I only have 2 notes and it's important, so I have 5 notes in my annotated outline before I go to write that section. So there is a method to our madness. This is about logical flow of the paper and making sure you have enough sources supporting each idea. Okay, so I think you have what you need. Go forth and prosper.